So I wanted to come on here and talk about advocacy. And because our 28 days is focusing on empowering women worldwide and dealing with the reproductive health of women, everything from menstrual cycle to menopause, everything in between, I'm going to talk about advocacy and from a standpoint of female reproductive health. So you don't have to be a nurse. I'm a nurse, and advocacy is part of our role, but you don't have to be in healthcare to really have advocacy be a big part of your life. It probably already is, and you don't even know it, or maybe are not naming it that. Because a lot of women are caregivers, right? To yourself, to your children, to your spouse, to your parents, to other family members. So on this page, I'm gonna do advocacy series. Please leave comments if you know, and just kind of tips on not to take things lightly. So let me give you an example. So my name is Stephanie Victoria, if you're new to this page. And basically I mentioned I've been a nurse since 2007. It's just been a long time. But the biggest part of obviously my role, I was an advocate and I was a strong advocate for my patients. But our 28 days is birthed from my own issues with fertility and reproductive health. And I thought to myself, and by that time I had been a nurse for years, and I was shocked at what I didn't know from a health, and I was already in a health background. And so that is kind of what sparked all of this. Like, if I'm in health and I don't know a lot of these things, what about if somebody's an accountant, an engineer, a teacher, or what have you, right? And so all of the self-advocacy I've had to do and then have now done on behalf of my children has led me to be like, advocating is a huge deal. So the biggest thing I tell people, I want to read off the exact definition of advocacy. But the biggest thing I tell people is that you are, when you go to the doctor, right? And he or she, a nurse practitioner, or whoever you're seeing, in that moment, you can do real life advocating for yourself. And what do I mean by that? You can simply ask them to rephrase what they said to you. So, for example, you're getting lab results back or diagnosis or reviewing of some system. There's already a hierarchy in healthcare where people kind of, and I would see it all the time, where a patient the doctor would leave the room and then I would go in as a nurse, and the patient basically didn't understand anything that was being said and had all of these follow-up questions, right? So I think people get overwhelmed. Knowledge is power, which is a true fact. Each one teach one, African proverbs, which I'm trying to build my business around. But I think people get intimidated, like, I don't know. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a doctor. I'm not this, I'm not that. Therefore, I don't have the knowledge base, and kind of just feel like, I don't know what questions to ask. I don't know what I don't know. And that is true. And we'll talk about how to educate yourself and slowly build more knowledge with whatever you're dealing with. But you, at the moment, what you do know is, you don't fully understand what's being said to you. So in that real life moment, the first thing you can do to advocate for yourself or advocate for whoever doctor's appointment you're with is you can just say, and you could actually just say these words. So I'll try to give phrases. You could say, thank you for explaining, but I'm just totally not clear. Can you rephrase that? Or restate it? And I think more than restate, rephrase, or provide me with another example, is forcing the person to go into their mental toolbox, right? So as a nursing faculty, I do it all the time. I do analogies that kind of work for my brain, and a student right then and there still does not understand. So it forces me to have to go into my brain and come up with a different way to explain what I'm trying to do. So explain the point that I want to get across. So I think simply that will force them to reword it for you. Now, it does not mean that it'll be 100% clear, but it might switch, and they will understand that they need, to speak to you in a different way. And this is a huge, huge, don't underestimate it. I could do videos and chat forever. And as I'm building my YouTube page, and I'm also on Clubhouse right now, you can find me, Stephanie Victoria, or Our 28 Days, OUR 28 Days, Our 28 Days. You'll find me on Clubhouse as well. But I do a lot of these because, that, sorry, I lost my train of thought. That part in itself of asking someone to rephrase is huge, because you got to take into consideration whatever your cultural background is. You might not, and people say culture and culture everywhere is oversaturated, but it really not. It's a big deal. You might not fundamentally understand the concept that's being presented to you. Your language background, if English is not your first language, also medical language. If you're just not well versed in medical terminology, you could be a US born citizen and English is your language, but you don't, medical language is a whole different language. So right then and there, that's the first step of advocating for self. A second thing is that you need to, every doctor's office give pamphlets, and they say nurses make the worst patients. I throw those pamphlets in my bag. I kind of read them. They end up stuck in there. Nobody really looks at them, pictures or what have you. But take your time and really read and digest the pamphlet, okay? And so that will be building your knowledge base, because remember I said knowledge is power, so that you could ask better questions. Another advocacy tip I tell people, and I think a lot of people don't realize this, a lot of clinics, maybe for your child or for yourself, you can do a nurse visit. And a nurse visit is not just for some, like if you're going through fertility stuff, because I'm going to always try to keep it in the context of like women's health and what's going on. There are nurse visits for, checking the labs, and you might not necessarily see the doctor or nurse practitioner, but you could do a nurse education visit. You can. And so, and now with COVID, virtual medicine or telehealth or telemedicine was a big deal even before COVID, but obviously COVID pushed it over. But look to see your insurance or your clinic or how they do, you could do a remote televisit. Now, here's how I feel about the remote visits. Pick and choose. I think with COVID, they were pushing so many things remote. I'm like, no, I need you to see my kid for this specific thing. But certain times, especially when you could use these remote visits to your advantage, especially when it's more knowledge-based, like you don't need to go in there, excuse me, to do your vital signs if you just want to ask further questions. And that you have more time. You, as you know, doctors or whoever have 15 minutes, but it's a solid 15 minutes with you, and you could get a lot on a televisit and really ask all of your clarifying questions. And so that's the strategic way to advocate for yourself, is just, and when you tell them, I want to book a visit for the purpose of education, it's a whole different thing. They come prepped to really inform you of what's going on. So I said in real time when you go to the office, and then actually being strategic, tip number 2, and scheduling a visit simply for the purpose of education. And it could be a phone call, it could be a virtual remote. And then once that, probably my other practitioners won't like this, but I kind of say like groom your healthcare team. This is the third tip, and that's part of advocating for yourself as well. Once they know you as someone who is going to ask more questions, and I'm not talking about being rude, I mean, just legit, I'm going to need more time in this appointment, Once they know that of you, your clinic, your team of doctors, your whoever, they will set more time for you. They will actually, and this is stuff that happens in the background. You won't even have to really say it. Once you get familiar, it happened all the time. Like if I know this patient, is going to ask me all of this, and I just know I need more time in that room, I would strategically maybe do the meds last. Not that they're hurt, but if meds are due at 8 and you have 5 patients, someone's first, someone's last. But I would put that patient last. just because I knew I was going to spend more time with them. So it's kind of, you're just grooming your healthcare team. Um, they'll come in like, I know she's going to ask all about the labs. They'll just be ready for that. And in the long run, you might learn that you don't even have to ask that many follow-up questions because they know how to communicate with you. They know kind of mentally where you are, what you understand, what you don't understand. And another tip that I wanted to give about self-advocacy, depending on what insurance you have, and what diagnosis, because certainly not everything falls for that, but there's a lot of healthcare plans that have case management, nurse case managers. And again, even being a nurse, my daughter was in NICU and I kept dismissing the nurse case manager because I was so busy. And a lot of things that I knew, but these people, you're like, who's calling me? It's a little annoying, but you have your team, as in your clinician, the person who's actually putting the stethoscope on you, drawing your lab, whatever. But a lot of people will have case managers for certain diagnoses, and they'll reach out and call, and you can get a lot of education, advocating for yourself, saying, I don't like what's going on. And really, a case manager's job is to be like that liaison in between and could reach out to this practitioner with this service and really piece the puzzle together for you. So now that I'm actually thinking and talking, maybe I'll do a clubhouse on case manager, because I think those who are in the know, but I think a lot of people don't know and don't fully utilize case managers, and they could be a real big asset to you, your family. I think people who have services, VNA services and things like that at home are aware, but you can kind of call into case management even for your team. Even for like, if you just have a primary care and you go to certain hospital, you can kind of link in. So that's a part of advocating for yourself as well. Let me see, I hope it doesn't kill the page, but let me see if I could read off the formal definition for advocacy, just to tie it in. So okay, so advocacy, and this is, I just Googled it, is public. Oh no, wait, I want self-advocacy from really, okay. All right, so self-advocacy is the action of representing oneself or one's views or interests. So you are representing yourself. You can always speak up for yourself. So the tips, quickly, what did we say? We said right there in real time, ask, can you rephrase that? I'm not fully understanding. Right then and there, you're gonna force them to try to figure out, get into your brain and try to figure out how to make things clear for yourself. Also, take advantage of the virtual visits and remote visits that are happening now, and literally say that this visit is for the purposes of education, or you know what I mean? They put a different code. But when you say that, or televisit, phone call, and have them, and take another thing, take notes so that you build your knowledge base and you could ask better questions and be able to better self-advocate the next appointment. Okay, so the televisits, and then also advocating for yourself is that maybe get a case manager or another member of the team, request another member of the team. A final thing, and I'll do more videos on it in terms of self-advocacy, is I don't know if people utilize their specialists as much as they should. So it's not to bash primary care. There are primary care doctors that are phenomenal. But if you pay, if you have a PPO or something like that, see, I always, and that's advocating for myself. There are things like my primary care is like, oh, I can do this. But like, say, if I have an issue, I don't even wait for them to eventually get me to an endocrinologist. Like if a symptom falls under the domain of another specialty, which most likely it will, no matter how small you think it might be, I automatically make an appointment for that specialist. And the reason, and although we say specialist, it goes over people's heads, is that you know, like say if you had cancer, of course you'd have an oncologist. I think people get to their specialists when they have huge, huge diagnoses. And I don't view it like that. I'm one of these people that fully use my insurance, and in the terms of, not in terms of unnecessary tests or anything like that, but I mean that people select different options in medical school for a reason. So, for example, I was an oncology nurse for many years, and so I knew more about oncology. And just like I said, when I had a reproductive issue, although I'm a nurse, I didn't know as much about that, but that wasn't my specialty. So, people specialize for a reason, and don't feel like you can't. So that's another advocacy, self-advocacy tip. Don't feel like you can't see a specialist. And in terms of keeping it in the context of women's health, is that there are women's health, it is your primary care, it is your OBGYN, and most people think it stops there. But I'm going to do a lot of teaching and videos. It's also endocrine system, hormones, and there's a specialty called reproductive endocrinologists. And so you really can find the right doctor to truly get to what is going on. And so I doctor shop a lot. And I feel like people feel like they can't get rid of the doctor if it's not suiting them and get another doctor. And I don't know why that is. And again, I'm not promoting rudeness. You can simply pick another doctor. And of course, this is all talking about insurance and what insurance you have, and network, out of network, and whatever the case may be. So of course, there are a lot of people in the country uninsured. But if you're able to, I personally, and I've always done this since 18, even before I became a nurse, I always choose that PPO because I want to be able to go see who I need to go see. So doctor shop also is a way of self-advocate, and it's not for minuscule things like I didn't like the blouse, you know, he or she was wearing. It's not that. It's just that if they're not speaking your same language, in terms of you two don't understand each other, it's not getting better, there's just a disconnect because it's very personal. Intrapersonal communication will make a difference. You can talk to your friend or do whatever and simply change your doctor. So that's another way to self-advocate for yourself. And I'm thinking, as I was saying this little tidbit, uh, there was something else that came to mind when I lost my train of thought when I said about um, doctor shopping. It'll come to me. I'll have to make another video. But anyway, I hope this is the introduction to, you enjoyed this little video about self-advocacy, advocating for yourself. It's huge, advocating for your children, your family, everyone, and these little tips, and just people don't know how to go about it. So leave some comments of some other videos you'd like me to share. Again, this is our 28 days. And so you can follow me on Clubhouse because you'll be able, I don't really do YouTube live. I'm just delving further more into this whole social media, but I'm on IG, our 28 days, our building a community, 28 because it's the average length of menstrual cycles. It's typically 28 days. So I'm hoping to bring you a lot of fun content. I'm on Clubhouse as our 28 days. If you follow me on Clubhouse, if you're able to get an invite, if you leave a comment as that you want an invite as Clubhouse opens up, I'll certainly send you an invite. And then, you know, on Clubhouse, you're able to kind of tap in and ask questions. But like and share, subscribe to this YouTube page, and be able to get notification of more videos. I have e-courses out on menstrual cycle in order to teach young girls, preteens and teens about the menstrual cycle. So that's my first e-course, but there are plenty in the works, getting ready to be built, okay? All right, guys, thank you. Delicious.